Hey guys, it's Lordcas and What Ifs, and welcome back to a What If Deku had energy manipulation. Sorry it's been a while, but I will try be more frequent. So let's begin this What If. Chapter 3, New Beginnings. As the light started fading into the soft, warm, orange glow of the coming evening, Izuku Midoriya had not moved from his friend's arms. Though his sobs had calmed a bit, he was still crying, unloading all his built-up pain into her shoulder. Okiko didn't mind. She saw how harshly the boy had been bullied firsthand throughout the year. Bakugo had seemingly rallied the school to bully Izuku specifically. She watched, time after time, as Izuku would walk to his desk with food smashed into one of his shirts. One time during their art class, Bakugo had spilled used paint water over him. Then there were Bakugo's constant threats and other students mocking him for such a weak quirk. The list went on, yet every day Izuku would give her that special smile. The smile only she and his mom had seen when he was genuinely happy. For those moments, all the pain he faced at school melted away and he could be the happy teen he should have been. I'm sorry for not being there for you sooner, Izuku, she thought to herself. Then she had an idea. Hey, Izuku. Why yeah, Okiko, he said as he tried to calm himself down. I was going to wait until after dinner tonight, but I think you should get it now, she said as she slung her backpack over her shoulder and unzipped it. Oh Okiko, you didn't have to get me anything besides my birthday isn't until July, he said as the tears started to stop. Of course I had to get you something silly, she said as she flashed him a bright smile. How could I not get my best friend a birthday gift? Ah, here it is, she said as she pulled out a new notebook with Hero Analysis for the Future. Volume 14 feet stamped into its dark green leather cover. Izuku, ever since I moved here last year you have been nothing but kind to me. You helped me out by opening your home to me, even if it was just to have dinner every night. You always made sure I had a friend, she spoke softly as she handed the book to him. Izuku took the outstretched book gently, as if it would crumble to dust with a harsh touch, and looked it over. Light pink threading wove the book's spine and decorated the edges of the pressed letters on the cover. A gentle reminder that she was always there for him should he need her. Once again Izuku felt tears roll down his cheeks. This time though, they were tears of joy. Thank you, Okiko, he said, barely choking back sobs as he fell to his knees. This is the first birthday gift from a friend I've gotten in years. Okiko crouched next to him and wrapped an arm back around his shoulder. She gave him a gentle squeeze as he stared at his gift with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry Izuku, that must have been really hard, she said, trying her best to comfort her friend. It's okay Okiko, he said as he stood up, wiping the fresh tears from his face. You know, if you ever want to talk I'm always here to listen, she offered. A fragile smile made its way to Izuku's face. I know, thank you Okiko. This means a lot, he said as he stood back up. No problem Izuku, Okiko replied with a bright smile. Now I don't know about you but I'm starving. As if answering for him, Izuku's stomach growled loudly. I might be a little hungry, he said with a sheepish grin. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's get back to your place and have some of your mom's delicious cooking, she said excitedly. Hope it's katsudon, Izuku said with a renewed pep in his step. You always hope it's katsudon Izuku, she teased playfully. So, who are you going to write about first in there? You. Of course, Izuku replied with his bright smile. After all, you gave me this book so it makes sense you'll be the first entry. You'll be an amazing hero one day Okiko, and I'll be there cheering you on. That's the spirit Izuku, Okiko cheered, but don't think that I'm just going to let you have the #1 spot. I'll be gunning to get there too, so you better watch out. I accept the challenge Okiko. I won't make it easy for you either, he replied. Izuku shut his bedroom door after Okiko left to head home, pulled out his new notebook and got to work on Okiko's entry. Okay, how many pages will I need for hers? He thought to himself. He usually only used a couple pages for each hero. All Might's entry had 4 pages all to himself, but that felt too little for Okiko's entry. He flipped a page, then another, then another. 8 pages just didn't feel like enough for some reason, but why? He turned another page and marked the end for her entry. This should be enough, right? He asked himself. He still couldn't shake the feeling that it wouldn't be enough, but he pushed those thoughts aside and got to work. Like every entry that came before, he started drawing. He had no hero costume to draw her in yet, so he just drew her in her school uniform, but something just felt off with the drawing. He shook his head as he erased the light sketch and started again. Each time he tried redrawing her, he just couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't good enough to represent her. He let out a heavy, frustrated sigh as he looked over to his clock. 3 hours. He had been failing to draw her well enough to be satisfied for 3 hours. Why? He asked the empty room. Why is this so hard? I drew All Might in like 30 minutes and was okay with that, so why am I struggling with her drawing so much now? He shook his head and put his pencil back to the paper and started drawing again. He took a deep breath and thought about her. Maybe some fresh thoughts would help him draw her better. Couldn't hurt, right? His thoughts wandered back to earlier when she consoled him. Her bright smile, her soft brown eyes, the slight curl in her bangs and the almost ethereal bounce in her hair. The memories brought a soft, warm smile to his face as his hands started moving to match the memory. After another 2 hours he was finally done. He looked at her drawing, giving it one final critique. Satisfied with his work, he fell asleep at his desk. His smile never left. What do you mean I can't see it yet? Okiko asked as she feigned being upset. It's not done yet, Izuku replied. I want it to be perfect before I show you. Okiko smiled at him. Okay, fine, she said. But the moment it's done I want to be the first to see it, deal? Oh please, like I was going to show it to anyone else first, he chuckled. Besides, even if I did, you would kill me. You bet I would, she joked. The two walked in comfortable silence for a while as they made their way to their last day of junior high. This is it, huh? Izuku wondered out loud. Hard to believe it's been a whole year, huh? Okiko asked. Yeah, I would have never thought this last year would have turned out like it did, he said with a small chuckle. Think Bakugo is going to leave you alone today? Okiko asked. No, Izuku said with a crestfallen expression. But he left you alone this whole week, Okiko pointed out. Won't matter, he replied sadly. If it's going to follow previous years, this will be the worst of them all. Okiko frowned as she watched her friend's happy and energetic personality drain. It still concerned her how harshly he had been treated by the one he had considered a friend. The only thing she could do is be there for him when he asked for her help. Attention students. A feminine voice rang out over the intercoms. Will the following students please report to the principal's office? Bakugo Katsuki, Okiko Uraraka and Midoriya Izuku. Bakugo Katsuki, Okiko Uraraka and Midoriya Izuku, please report to the principal's office, thank you. Ah, well I guess it can't be helped. Go ahead you three, all we were going to do today was a small experiment to finish off the year. Mr. Nye said with a smile. Bakugo walked out of the room before the man had finished what he had said. What bullshit does that fat old man want now? He thought to himself. Izuku and Okiko bowed before they left and started walking towards the office, Izuku leading the way. It didn't take too long to reach his office. Come on in you two. A voice called out after they knocked. As the two entered they were greeted with Bakugo leaning against a side wall with a scowl on his face and an overweight and bald middle-aged man wearing a beige suit with a white undershirt and red bow tie. Please, have a seat, he said with a smile, gesturing to 3 open seats placed in front of his large desk. Are we in trouble or something, sir? Okiko asked, taking the seat placed in the middle. Oh no, not at all, he replied, that smile ever present. Then why are we here, sir? Izuku asked. I just wanted to congratulate you three is all, he answered. 3 of our students managed to get into UA, no doubt this will reflect well on you and the school. I don't give a fuck about this, I'm leaving. Bakugo shouted as he stood up and left. Ah, as loud as always Katsuki Bakugo. Very well, have a nice rest of your day, the principal said. I am most proud of you though, Izuku Midoriya. Though your quirk is weak, you managed to pass the entrance exam. No doubt the school's reputation will be reflected brightly. His quirk isn't weak, Okiko shouted. He trained really hard to pass the exam, we both did. As Okiko let the principal know just how hard the two had trained, Izuku noticed something. That smile never left his face, almost like it had been forced to stay there. A sickly, fake smile. Come on Izuku, let's get back to class. There are better ways we could use our time. Okiko said as she practically dragged Izuku out of the principal's office. Good luck in your futures, you two, he called out with that sickly smile still present. I'll be watching all three of you. Gosh, can you believe him? Okiko ranted, calling your quirk weak and not even acknowledging how far you've come. It's okay, Okiko, really. I'm kind of used to it at this point, he said. Come on, we should get back to class. Okiko watched as he headed back to their class with a single thought going through her head. But you shouldn't be Izuku. Half the day remained and amazingly, Bakugo hadn't done anything to Izuku. Yet, he dreaded. Hey, Midoriya. A voice pulled him out of his thoughts. Why yes, he replied meekly, looking over the small group that had gathered behind the boy who grabbed his attention. Hey, we just wanted to apologize, he said with a downtrodden expression. We let our fear of Bakugo stop us from trying to be friends with you. It was stupid and we feel really bad about it. Oh, no, really, it's fine, I understand. Izuku replied as he frantically waved his hands dismissively. Yeah, I've only been here for about a year and even I can tell he throws his weight around pretty heavily. Okiko chimed in. Still, it doesn't excuse what we did and we just wanted to apologize, the boy said as he held out his hand. I hope UA goes better for you, Izuku. Izuku smiled as he started to tear up. Thank you, it means a lot, he said as he shook the boy's outstretched hand. He didn't need his praise. He knew he was the best in this school. What really bothered him, what really got under his skin was, how did Deku and his cheerleader cheat to get better than him? He looked out over the roof of the school, something about it just calmed him down. Like a king looking over his kingdom. He let out a frustrated sigh as his thoughts ran wild. It doesn't make any sense. Fucking Deku and the goddamn cheerleader can't be better than me. They just can't. Maybe the cheerleader slept with someone to get them both in, but that wouldn't explain how they scored higher than me. Getting them in that way would just kick out a couple shitty extras, not get top scores. He slammed his fist against the chain link fence that wrapped around the roof as his frustration started to boil over. Doesn't matter. I'll put that useless nerd back in his place and show him and that bitch where they belong. Few things could truly rile the explosive blonde up quite like Izuku Midoriya, even fewer could bring him down from that anger. As he stomped back towards his classroom, one thought ran through his mind. Break his spirit. Izuku stared at the start of the data section of Okiko's entry as a thought crossed his mind. Hey Okiko, he asked. Yeah, she replied. Have you given any thought to your hero name? Well, of course, she said with a slight giggle. You wanna know what it is? Absolutely, Izuku replied, his eyes glimmering with excitement. I gave this a lot of thought when I was a little younger. She said as she struck an over-the-top pose. I'll be rescue hero. Uravati. Izuku quickly added a mental note to draw that pose in the section of her first portrait before adding her hero name into her description. Okiko heard some of his muttering but had learned to tune it out to give him his few moments of peace that it brought him. She did manage to hear him mutter how cool he had thought the name was before she tuned him out fully, a small sense of pride starting to swell up within her. What about you, Izuku? Have you thought of a hero name? She asked. Oh, I have, but nothing has really stuck, you know. He replied. Well, I might have an idea. Okiko replied with a slight smirk. Really, what were you thinking? He asked. Why not Deku? I know, but hear me out first, okay? She said before Izuku could put up a fuss. I know that Bakugo has used it to insult you for so long, but that's why it should be your hero name. He says it to call you useless, but I think that it sounds like, Dekiru, like, you can do it. Plus, if you take what he says as an insult and use it to help and save people, it will take away the sting that always comes with it. You know that old saying, wear insults like armor and they can't be used to hurt you. I don't know, Okiko, he replied hesitantly. Okiko watched as his previously joyous and excited demeanor disappeared as he shrunk into himself. A defense he probably picked up from Bakugo's torment. It's okay, Izuku, just something I thought would be a good way to show he won't be able to hurt you anymore, or maybe that you have moved on, she explained as she gave him her own warm smile. I can't wait to see what you pick for your hero name. Thank you, Okiko, really. Maybe today won't be so bad after all, he said with a shaky, yet hopeful, smile. Izuku sat in the nurse's office, clothes dripping wet with water that Bakugo had used to clean paint off his brushes in their art class. His day had not been the best, those usually came if Bakugo was out sick, but it hadn't been the worst either. He let out a heavy sigh, something told him Bakugo wasn't done yet. He didn't really need to be in the nurse's office, of course, it was more or less his safe haven. He started to heat the air around him with his quirk in an attempt to dry his clothes enough to continue the day. Accident. What a load of crap. Okiko seethed. Not to mention you were so close to finishing that All Might painting too. It was looking so good. Parts of her clothes were caught in the splash zone, though not nearly as badly soaked as Izuku's. Seriously, how does he keep getting away with stuff like this? I'm sorry, Izuku said remorsefully. Izuku, Okiko asked as her face went from twisted in anger to concern for her friend in an instant. Because of me our clothes got wet and you got caught up in this mess, he said as tears began to form once again. It's not your fault, Izuku, she said as she let one of her hands rest on his back. How is it not, Okiko? He argued. He goes after me and me alone, and this time, a friend of mine got caught up in this. Izuku, it's just a little water, I'll be fine. You're being too hard on yourself, she comforted as she rubbed his back gently. If being your friend means getting splashed with some dirty water is the worst that happens to me, I think I'll manage, she said with a slight giggle. She was infectious. Her laugh, her smile, everything about her just made him feel so safe and happy. No matter what it was that Bakugo had done, or how badly he felt about himself, Izuku knew that as long as Okiko was by his side there was hardly anything that could stand against them. The tears that were threatening to fall, receded as his bright smile came back. Yeah, I guess you're right. Of course I am silly. Now what do you say we go back and get this day over with? She offered. He took in a deep breath to finish calming his nerves. Yeah, let's go. Oh, before we leave for the day I just want to thank Mr. Nai. Izuku said as the two left the nurse's office in drier clothes. His body was shaking, not with fear, but with anger. Give it back, Bakugo. Fucking make me nerd, Bakugo hissed. In his hands was the notebook Okiko had given Izuku. Or can you not do anything? If you can't stop this, how are you gonna be a hero? Bakugo's free hand sparked. Just give it back. Why do you always have to treat him like dirt? Okiko shouted from beside Izuku. Haven't you done enough to mess with him? Shut the fuck up, pink cheeks. This doesn't concern you, Bakugo shouted. Bakugo slammed his free hand into the cover of the book, intent on destroying something that obviously meant so much to the nerd. Break his spirit, he shouted in his head. The sound of a wet palm slapping the leather cover echoed through the near-empty room, and that was all. Izuku quickly snatched his book back from the, now puzzled, Bakugo and rushed out of the room. Okiko snapped out of her shock as Izuku, in his hurry to get out of the room, shoved a desk out of his way. She ran after him, taking a brief moment to look back in the room at Bakugo, who was just staring at his hands, before rushing out into the hall, yet Izuku was nowhere to be seen. Izuku, she called out. Izuku, where are you? Ragged breath gave her her answer. Behind the stairs that lead up to the second-year classrooms, knees to his chest, was Izuku. Izuku, are you okay? She asked as she knelt next to him. He didn't say anything as he latched onto her shirt and buried his face into her shoulder, hyperventilating. Is he having a panic attack? She asked herself worriedly as she wrapped her arms around him. Izuku's head was spinning. He felt so sick to his stomach. Every fiber of his being screamed at him that what he did was wrong, that he should feel terrible for what he did, but part of him was thrilled at what he had done. It was such a massive conflict of his every moral that he couldn't understand how to handle it, and he started panicking. I shouldn't have done that. But if I didn't, Okiko's gift would have been ruined. I had to. His thoughts raced and darted. Would he get kicked out of UA for this? Would All Might be disappointed in him? He wasn't sure when he grabbed onto her, or even when she had found him, if he was being honest. All he knew was he was glad she was here now, her presence remaining a beacon of comfort and safety to him. I'm sore, his shaky voice started to say. None of that, she said after gently soothing him. No apologizing, just relax, it's okay. Izuku's eyes slowly made their way to the floor before he rested his head against her shoulder again. Thank you, Okiko. It's okay, Izuku, I'll always be here for you, she replied as she gently stroked his back. That's That's a big door, Okiko said as both her and Izuku stood outside the door to Class 1A. It has to be for people with heteromorphic quirks, Izuku said as he also looked at the massive door that towered before the two. Well, shall we take the first steps to becoming true heroes? He asked with a shaky smile. Okiko smiled back at him. Absolutely, she answered. After all, this is where we start our journey to becoming heroes, right? Izuku smiled as he looked back to the door. Its size, still daunting yet different, almost as if it was issuing a challenge to the two. Right, Izuku said as he took his first steps towards his dream. That's it for the video. The next part will be the final part. Goodbye and see you next video.